Thank you all for joining us here at the Palace Hotel Ballroom. No, I'm sorry. If I can't do a Blues Brothers joke, it's just not a good day. But seriously, thank you for joining us today for the celebration of our associate professors. One of the highlights of faculty once they receive tenure is an opportunity to take a step back or forward, depending on which way you want to think about it, breathe for a bit, because they're climbing up the ladder of success, and they've done great things to get here, and they're going to do even more great things as they keep going forward. So this is an opportunity for the college to highlight what people do. The best people to introduce our associate professors are the people closest to them. So with that, I'm going to say from the College of Engineering, congratulations all of you, and each head will introduce each of the following speakers. But I just want to say you guys make us proud. We're doing good, and congratulations on your promotion, and congratulations on what's coming up next. So with that, Milland from Electrical Engineering.
So good afternoon, everybody. I guess not quite afternoon yet. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Milland Kulkarni. I'm the Michael and Catherine Burke head of the Elmore Family School of Electrical and Computer Engineering. And it gives me immense pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Qiang Chu. So Professor Chu got his PhD from the University of Maryland in 2013, and after that he went to Duke University, where he started out as a research scientist and then became an assistant research professor. And we had the extremely good fortune of hiring him away from Duke in August of 2020 when he joined Purdue as an assistant professor. Qiang does pretty amazing work in computer vision and machine learning. And to me, one of the really cool things about his work is that it's deeply theoretical. He thinks a lot about representation of ideas in computer vision, and thinks a lot about how to understand images and how to actually learn the representations of those images. That's critical to doing good computer vision. But it's not just that he does this deep theoretical work. He shows how that deep theoretical work has real-world impact. And in his career, both at Duke and now here at Purdue, he's done amazing stuff on taking those theoretical insights and applying them to applications that change the world and that improve people's health. While he was at Duke, he looked at using some of his techniques for autism early diagnosis in collaboration with Duke University's hospital. And now he's actually taking some of these same ideas and looking at how to do early cervical cancer diagnosis. And I believe this is a partnership with folks out in Africa. So this is like not just changing the U.S., it's changing the world. It's truly amazing work, and I'm really excited to hear what Qiang has to say about his journey. Apparently it involves fish.
Thanks, Milland. Yeah. Thanks for this opportunity for me to talk about my journey. I did my undergraduate study at National University of Singapore, full of wonderful memories. If you ask me about my personal favorite, will be this undergraduate research opportunity program I joined during my second year. So from there, I did about 2.5 years undergraduate research at a place called Cambridge Digital Labs. So the curiosity and the passion created during those days clearly last and retain me in this career today. So from my own experience, today when I teach my undergraduate class, when I teach my undergraduate research class or my graduate students, so my number one goal is still try to promote the interest and to pass on the passion. I did my graduate study at the University of Maryland, College Park, my postdoc at Duke. I'm a lucky person who always met some wonderful mentors. All of them have strongly influenced me. So here I try to quote one sentence from each of them and try to state some of my shared belief. How to treat our students. Professor Ramacharapa once said, in my business, we take more pride in the achievements of our students than our personal accomplishments. Yeah. So this sentence actually simply explains the way how he treats me and every of his students. So I like to keep this sentence in mind and to practice it. How to select a research problem. Professor Guillermo Shapiro once commented on one common misunderstanding about applications are considered easier than theories. So he said, when we focused on making an impact and working on applications, we end up opening problems that are really new and very hard. I can't agree more. From previous autism project, our ongoing cervical cancer project, and so on. Whenever we really want to deliver a real-world solution, excellent research problems just appear by themselves, one after another. How to consider a research career overall. Yeah, Professor Robert Cardbank once commented on his own career as a mathematician. He said, "My father always think I should find a real job. And at some point, the fun would have to stop." He's still waiting. So at the moment, this sentence right away reminds me my favorite passage in the book of Drums. You are not a fish. How do you know the joy of fish? To lead a happy life, we need a job and a hobby. People who can take their hobbies as their daily job are really lucky. So I consider myself one of them. Yeah, so next I would like to share two personal journeys, especially to my students in the audience, about how joyful research can be. The first journey I would like to share is about exploring orthogonal low-rank embedding. This is actually from my previous research about 10 years ago. As we know, many high-dimensional data, they often stay in low-dimensional subspace. For example, same person's face under different lighting condition actually forms a 9-dimensional subspace. Like the matrix 1, Y1, Y2, Y3 here, they are expected to be low rank. But in reality, due to many factors, those matrices are typically full rank. Okay. So we were hoping, or we were looking for some transformation matrix T here to hopefully recover the underlying low-rank structure. This matrix nuclear norm we used here is a sum of the singular value. Is known as a very good approximation to the matrix rank. So some very simple intuition actually lead to the following objective function. As you can see here, this first term here is actually minimize the nuclear norm of individual class, like Y1, Y2, Y3 here. Basically to say, we like samples from the same class that look similar to each other by being low rank. And this second term here is try to maximize the nuclear norm. When different classes are grouped together, the capital Y here is a concatenation of Y1, Y2, Y3. So basically, we like samples from different classes. They still look different from each other by being high rank. Okay? So with this simple intuition, the first sanity check I did at the moment is as follows. Those red and blue, yellow dots from one class, okay? And those blue and purple dots from the other. So apply this transform. First, as expected, those lines from different class, lines from the same class now simply collapsed into a single line. But what really surprised me are those lines from different class. Now they become orthogonal, okay? A happy surprise, right? But why orthogonal here? I was so curious. And digging a bit more, we found we can actually prove the follows. The nuclear norm of the concatenation of A and B is less and equal than the sum of individual nuclear norm. And the equality is satisfied if and only if column space of A and B are orthogonal. So with this theorem, actually we know this objective function is non-negative and minimized to 0 if and only if different classes become orthogonal. We also know a good objective function for classification should simultaneously reduce intra-class variation and maximize interclass separation. So this objective function happened to achieve this goal without the help of any hyperparameter. So what a lucky coincidence. I was so happy after figuring this out. And after that, we report a couple of additional findings. For example, we can simply replace this transformation matrix T with a neural network. So now we can learn a deep model by using a new orthogonal low-rank loss. If we compare with the standard softmax loss, you can see this new loss actually introduce beta margin and also a beautiful low-rank structure within each class. And we also report a couple of additional findings, say this idea helps cross-modality embedding, imaging hashing, future learning, self-supervised learning, and so on. So what a joy. The second journey I'd like to share is about exploring filter subspace in deep learning. But this time, quite several of my students in the audience are the main character of this journey. In a neural network, as we know, most of model parameters are stored as convolution filters. So our journey started with a very simple idea. How about to decompose each convolutional filter as a linear combination of some filter subspace elements, referred to as filter atoms here. So in this way, clearly each convolutional layer now will become two, a filter atom layer followed by an atom coefficient layer. Both layers remain convolutional. So at the moment, my collaborator and I, we only aim to make our neural network more robust to local deformation. We didn't realize at all a wonderful journey just started. So around that time, actually, I met my first PhD student. So I shared with him the following intuition. Think about a car get rusted over time. Okay? In a cartoon way, we have this brand new wheel and window for the new car, rusted wheel and shattered window for the old car. So clearly, we may need a different set of filter atoms in order to generate a perfect response at the wheel and window position. Well, however, what remains the same across these two cases are the definition of the car. Right? A car, you need to have wheel, you need to have windows. So that means you need to assign large weights to those wheel and window channel. In other words, we might be able to preserve the same set of atom coefficients here across these two cases for some we call domain invariant representation. So this intuition clearly suggests in a neural network, at each layer, we may be able to learn different filter subspace for different domains, but keep our subspace coefficient shared across domain. So this student actually very hands-on, very quickly come back and tell me this intuition indeed worked. So now, for example, we can perform unsupervised adaptation from this computer game image, like a GTA, if you can recognize, to segment those real-world street view image. If you compare column B and C, you can see this technique indeed helps. Later, we also prove such layer-wise correction through filter atom transform, counter domain shift up to a bounded error. So this time, I can still remember how happy he was after figuring all this out. And simply out of curiosity, we extend this idea by further enforce our filter subspace to be continuous. So surprisingly, this time, our neural networks start to produce continuous representation. So now we can, for example, synthesize how object rotates, how bacteria grows, and soon we find more and more applications actually benefit from this simple technique, such as 3D reconstruction from a single frame, or even coloring those single bit images. I'm sure you can see we have quite a bit of fun here. And the excitement never ends. Entering the current large model era, actually 2 of my students approached me and shared one extremely exciting news with me. We can actually update our large model by only touching their filter subspace. Okay. Compare with LoRa, the popular model update scheme, we only need to touch orders of magnitudes fewer parameters for comparable performance. And even more exciting, the same 2 students further showed me, if we choose to update our model by only touching the filter subspace, the neural network model similarities now will be reduced to the filter subspace distance by taking inner product. So they actually proved a very simple but very interesting linear relationship between the popular model CCA similarity between our filter subspace similarity. The only difference is we are millions times faster. What a joy. One DoD grant once requested my team to think about one dream question shared by many machine learning people. That is, how to keep learning over time without forgetting the past. I have a very simple solution. How about just learn one neural network at a time? Just keep doing that. Yeah. We will not forget anything. Yeah, you may laugh. I agree. This is too naive and not practical. However, with all the findings from my students, it's very hard for not thinking of the following possible fix. That is, how about let's keep updating our filter subspace and just store them. A tiny component anyway. And keep our filter atom coefficients, the remaining millions of parameters, insensitive over time. At any point, if we like, we can retrieve a set of filter atoms, multiply with our atom coefficients to perfectly reconstruct the original neural network. So we will never overwrite anything, and we will never forget anything. And also remember, in this case, our model similarity can be calculated by taking inner product. So that means it is super easy for us to retrieve any relevant historic neural network models whenever we want. So clearly this is an ongoing journey, lots of fun ahead, so I'm very happy. This is my wonderful team. Probably 2 members are not here. And really thank you all for joining with me this joyful journey. As you can see, actually, I prepared this talk with you in mind. And great thanks to our sponsors. After joining Purdue, many people helped me. So I would like to sincerely thank each of them. And in particular, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my faculty mentors, Amy, Ed, Dimitri, and Milan. Thank you all.
So I think we've got time for some questions. So, I don't know if this is on. It's on? It's on? Okay. I guess I'll start. You showed us a couple of examples of these places where one single cool idea turned into this whole ecosystem of pieces of work. The thing that I always worry about, and because I talk to my students about this all the time, is the value of serendipity in research, something just sort of happens to work out. You've had a lot of success doing this, right? You've shown 2 examples. I think those are not the only 2 examples of this happening in your career. Are there things that you do when you're selecting research problems to say that I'm going to think about this theoretical insight, not because I know exactly how it's going to play out in the future, but because I have a sense that this actually underlies a lot of topics and a lot of applications? Do you do you optimize for that serendipity?
Yes, clearly I think I have quite a few students. Clearly, everybody try different directions, and I try to report some more joyful one. And there's some of the research you have to try, and then okay. So in this way, I think I remember somebody said, I think I read somewhere, when you do a great or start a research problem, you always start from A, and your target is B, right? But when you go there, actually, usually we end up at C. So this year, if you can justify your discovery, justify your findings, I consider this is still a wonderful research. Of course, you tell people a different story in that case. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. Very interesting. So I think oftentimes, when a graduate student start their PhD or master journey and looking for something research topic to work on, they have their advisor to sort of like, here is a good problem that you should look into. But eventually, we want them to be trained to become scholars, and right. So do you have any advice for students who are sort of, going through that transition of how do they, sort of find, the fun of the topics that they wanted to work on?
Right. So actually, this is a wonderful question. I'm sure this is a question faced by many faculties. So I think it's good to have several students who are at different training stage. That is actually, I found this is very beneficial. So whenever a new student joins your group, usually you try to place him in a project probably led by a more senior students, and so he can see what are the typical, some wisdom, try to increase the chance of more educated guests. Okay. And soon after that, after the first 1 or 2 years, because within the first 1 or 2 years, if you ask a student to enjoy research, it's pretty hard because they are under pressure. They want to publish more papers. They want to prove to their advisor how capable they are, and so. But at the later stage, especially start from year 3, year 4, or year 5, that is the time I really try to push my students, try to enjoy the research. I hope some of my students now start to understand the reason why I say slow down the publication speed, try to enjoy, and now you are able to graduate if you like. Okay? But use the remaining time, just try to enjoy. Because as I mentioned, if you do not like this, it's very hard to retain this young talent in this career for the remaining of his time. Right? So we really like excellent people. We train them. They can stay here and make wonderful contributions, and at the same time enjoy your life.
My question is probably too technical, but I was just wondering what the nuclear norm of neural. Hang on. Sorry for the technical question, but how do you calculate the nuclear norm of a neural network?
Oh, okay. So I can go back to. So you see this is actually, you can see this is just a loss function. So you have a neural network, is your neural network, try to produce a representation at the end. And your last layer produce a representation, satisfy your nuclear norm constraint. It's like you put this nuclear norm at the end of your network to make your network together to produce a low-rank representation. So this is how this beautiful picture generated. Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
So my question is sort of related to the first section only. So my question is mostly related to the first section. I think you showed a graph initially where there are two classes, and you sort of noticed that they were orthogonal. That led you to some sort of theoretical justifications. So my question is, do you have any tips on what kind of things can we visualize, and tips on how we can extend that into rigorous theory, basically?
Yep. So this actually, first of all, this is my wonderful memories. And I like to keep this great memory to always remind my students. Every time, try to start with some very good intuition and always try to start with some toy example. Do not start with a very complex model. So for example, later I show you we can actually using this loss function for neural network for many, but we usually start with points, lines, and so on. So those things are easy to visualize, right? It's hard to visualize 1,000-dimension data, but it's very easy to visualize a 2D, a 3D. So this is actually a tips I always try to force. So usually when you read some of my student paper, you usually see a very toy example. Yeah, I just remember recently they published how to tuning transformer, but they try to show a convex optimization toy scenario. They are all relevant. As long as you can visualize this, you should be able to hint people, say, okay, create an imagination space for people. Okay.
I think we probably have time for one more question. Does that seem right, guys?
I can just speak now.
Because it's being recorded, we've got to go into the mic. That's fine. I gotta get my steps in.
As a peer student, I just wonder what kind of quality you expect the student to be, like to be success.
Yeah. So actually, at the very beginning, I would say, of course, you take your regular class, you get the typical education and so on. But what I really expect is, do you still have a passion? Do you still enjoy this interest and passion? As I mentioned at the beginning, this is some quality. I really hope I really try to keep that in each of my students. Yeah. At the end of the PhD, you don't hate research. As long as you have a passion, you have an interest, I'm sure you spend time, you will do something wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.